Are you looking to purchase cars from auctions, but you don't have a dealer's license? Well, good news is there's still a few auctions that you could take advantage of that you can score some amazing deals on that don't require a license at all. So I'm going to go over the key differences with each of them so you can decide for yourself which one is the best for you. And make sure you stay to the end where I also go over some crucial mistakes to avoid that could end up costing you thousands of dollars in expenses. Let's get right into it. So for the first auction, I'm sure you've heard about it before. If you haven't and you're in the car world, maybe you've been living under a rock, I don't know, but it's Copart auctions. This is an online auction as well as an auction that has public lots that you can go to as well. They are the biggest auction that is in America where you don't have to have a license to attend, and they have car lots basically in every state as well. You actually can just go onto the site completely for free. You just have to register just to be able to look at what cars are going through there, the type of deals it's going through as well. Of course, if you did want to go into actually purchasing a car or bidding for a car, you would have to purchase one of their memberships. It starts at $99 per year. With this beginner membership, there are some limitations to it though, primarily being that first of all, you can only bid on one vehicle at a time, and then the other thing is you can only bid up to $2,000 for a car without having to leave a deposit for it. Let's say if you go for a $3,000 car or a $4,000 car, you'd have to leave a 10% deposit on the amount that you're going to be bidding beforehand as well. Of course, yes, the deposit is fully refundable. They're not just going to be stealing your money and just running away with things, but that is just something you have to keep in mind when you're jumping into every car you'll be bidding on. After that, the next membership is their premier membership. With this one, instead of being $99 a year, is $249 a year. And then when you're initially signing up, you also have to pay a deposit of $400 as well. And it's basically working around like how that basic membership is, but let's say with this one, that $400 deposit that you're leaving is going to go towards that initial car you're going to be purchasing. But this is going to be for the one where, you know, let's say if you're someone that's going to be buying a lot of cars at a time, this is potentially the one for you. You could bid on multiple vehicles at a time. You can buy vehicles up to $100,000 in one single day, and for every car you're going to be bidding on, you don't have to keep leaving a deposit of that, let's say 10%, like the basic membership had to. When you jump into their site, you're going to be seeing two different types of cars that you could go for. Some cars are cars that you can just potentially purchase completely on your own, again without having a dealer's license or anything. Some are going to be limited for people that have some type of business license, but I will say if you don't have a license yourself, you could actually get a broker where you could buy through them. Of course, there's going to be fees and stuff like that you'd have associated with going through that broker, but at least you'll be able to have a wider variety of cars you could choose from as well. And you can get any type of information that you want about getting the broker through Copart in the website as well. Now, just to talk about some of the tough things with Copart, first of all, this is not for someone that just does not know a crazy amount about cars. If you're buying from an auction like this is primarily salvage and rebuilt title cars. You can buy a clean title car here and there, but that's not going to be the main ones. You should be jumping into a car expecting to put a decent amount of work in. And realistically, if you are going to be outsourcing and paying a mechanic to do basically all the work with this car, it's probably going to end up being where it's not really going to be worth it, and you'd basically be better off just buying a regular price car from Facebook Marketplace, let's say. It's only really going to make sense if you have the mechanical expertise to be able to fix most of the problems yourself, and this could range from things that could be a little bit more time consuming rather than just like brake changes and doing a tune-up for the car, let's say. Yes, you could potentially bid for a car that is way cheaper than the original retail price would be for that car, but the reality is you only can really check out the cars but so much. They really don't give you much information about the car. Even seeing things like, oh, it runs and drives, yes, it's possible that it might run and drive, but it's a very vague description because it might literally just be where, all right, it just ran for 2 seconds and that's about it, and maybe you could put it into drive and go forward for a bit, but maybe you can't put it into reverse and go back. So, you know, you really can't trust things like that. And if you make the decision to go there in person to check out these cars, then it's really not like you can do a crazy amount to check out the cars either. You can't bring an OBD scanner, you can't go for test drives. There's still a lot of stuff that you really can only see so much about the car when you're purchasing it. The other thing is the fees that these cars have are insane, or I should say the auctions have are insane. Yes, like you could purchase a car where, you know, your top bid might come in at $500, but let's say after all the fees are added in, it might literally be like $2,000 all said and done, especially if you end up having to get transportation for that car as well. So I would highly suggest, if you are using Copart, and again, the great thing about Copart I will say is that there's a lot of them in America, so it's probably going to be at least a couple of them around you, and it's a good amount of cars that'll be available there as well. But at the very least, make sure that you're going to be checking exactly what those fees are before you purchase the car, rather than trying to figure that stuff out after you end up bidding for the car. But that's everything about Copart. Now to go on to the next one, which is very similar. I'm pretty sure you you might have heard of it before as well, but that's IAAI. They're very similar to Copart in a lot of ways, mainly being that they're also primarily an insurance auction. So you're going to be seeing also a lot of salvage cars, rebuild title cars there as well. They have the same type of setup as well, where you can purchase online, but you can also check out the cars there in person with their lots. Generally speaking, I mean, they're just about as big as Copart, but they're not as big. So, you know, maybe it might be a little less cars going at the auction that's around you, or maybe you might have to even travel a little bit farther to get to an IAA auction rather than a Copart auction. The difference with their membership is the same thing. You could go into there for free and just kind of check out cars. Of course, you can't bid on them. They only have one membership option, which technically, if you're going to be buying a lot of cars, it actually does make a little bit more sense. It's $200 as a yearly fee, and there's no deposit you have to make upfront for it, and you could be purchasing as many cars you want within a year as well. That is the nice thing. I mean, it's a little bit cheaper than the Copart Premier membership, and again, you don't have to leave a deposit at all when you're just jumping into everything. And just to let you know, it is also the same thing just like Copart, where you could buy regular cars that's open to anyone from the public that just jumps into the platform, and then there's also going to be cars that's specifically for people with a license, but again, you can get a broker through IAA as well. Now again, basically the same things that I said about Copart for some of the things I don't like overall about the platform is the same that kind of carries on here, where yes, you can only check out the cars, but so much, you can't test drive them, you can't bring an OBD scanner. It's also going to be very expensive fees when it comes time to actually buying the car as well. But I would say just from personal experience, and even also with other car dealers that I've spoken to and people that have flipped cars, most people would generally say that the customer service is a good amount better with IAA, and is also just a little bit better quality cars rather than Copart, where the cars don't really need as much work and as much attention to actually get them, let's say, ready for sale, or at least just being able to be good to drive. And I do believe with some states they even have it where you can actually have IAA handle the paperwork things, like let's say registering the car and getting the stuff done with the DMV so that you don't have to do it yourself, which is a nice extra service that they could do. And now the last option outside of these two really big massive auctions that basically takes up most of America is also public auctions as well. And these are auctions that's kind of like a different category of things between being police auctions, government auctions, or just smaller local auctions that's just owned by smaller businesses. And to find out information about joining these types of auctions, you could just type in things like police auctions near me, government auctions near me, public auctions near me, just things like that. These ones, obviously, that's a pretty big mix of how they could be run because they're all run in very different ways in different states. But generally speaking, there's also going to be around the same type of thing where you could look at the cars on an online site, but at the same time also go to the auction and check out the cars. And I will say it's a much better chance with some of these type of auctions where you could actually at least use an OBD scanner to check out the car, and you could check out the car a little bit more with a lot of these auctions than, let's say, things like Copart or IAA. And the type of cars that are there could potentially be just like accident cars that are coming from insurance, but it also could be repossessed cars, it could be stolen cars, it could be government owned vehicles. It's a really big mix of things, especially depending on the type of auction that you're going to in the public auction type of route. Usually to get set up with these is either going to be where you leave a deposit to pay for whatever your first car will be, or it would also be some type of membership that you'd pay per year to get access as well. But I will say the fees from what I've seen, generally speaking, are going to be a good amount cheaper than things like Copart or IAA. And that's really what could potentially end up saving you a lot of money down the road if you're going to be purchasing a good amount of cars, because trust me, those fees add up really quick. I would say the con to this type of auction is just that there's not going to be as many available. You might have to drive a little bit farther away to potentially get to one, and it might even be where they're not just as many cars going through these auctions, or they're not as many auctions that come through each week. Let's say you might end up being where maybe you might have to wait a month for the next auction to come up. But having that said, I would still say for me, this is actually the best auction type out of the three. But at the same time, I mean, you could let me know exactly what your experience has been if you've been to any of these, either between Copart, IAA, public auctions, or one that I haven't even gotten to yet. The quick thing before we get into the mistakes that you really need to avoid, I did also put together a free training teaching how I make $5,000 to $10,000 per month flipping auction cars while working under 10 hours per week. If you are looking to do the same thing yourself and you're trying to just get things done while you're working your job, this is going to be a great training for you. To get access to that training, just go to the link in the description below. Now just for a couple of tips to just make sure that you're doing things the smart way and avoid making the common mistakes that most people make using these type of auctions. First things first is just making sure that you're going to these auctions in person. I know it might seem very tempting to just bid online. You know, you see a nice deal coming up where it, looks like the car is going for $1,000 or so, and you're like, wow, this is a car that should normally go for $5,000 or something. But trust me, it could be deceptive because you can can get that car home and then still end up having to spend another $4,000 or $5,000 in expenses into it, and then the whole thing was just a wash. So at the very least, just go there in person. Yes, even if you can't test drive the car a crazy amount and all that stuff, it'll at least be able to give you a better perspective of exactly what that car is like. Along with that aspect, I would also say 2 other things. First thing is also just making sure you're really diving in deep about what the common problems of those cars are that you're going to be buying, and making sure that you're inspecting those issues thoroughly when you get there in person, because it's a good chance that that problem probably will be there potentially when you get there, which will be able to give you a better decision on if you should still go and buy that car or not, and exactly how much you should expect to pay for it. And then as the last thing, also just trying to get a Carfax or an auto check with that car. Yes, it won't tell you every single thing about it, and a lot of times honestly Carfax, it won't catch everything, but it'll be able to give you a better story of what that car has been through for it to even get there, which could be a really huge aspect in itself. But that's really everything. That's all the auctions that I would say would be the best for someone that doesn't have a dealer's license. If I've missed anything, again, drop it in the comments below. But that's it. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.